Hello, Misfit entrepreneurs. This is Dave Lukas, and welcome to another episode of the Misfit Entrepreneurial, where it is our job to help you unleash your inner misfit and break through to higher levels of success, wealth, and fulfillment by bringing you the best insight and information from the world's top entrepreneurs, with a specific focus on their misfit side, the specific traits, habits, and secrets that have allowed them to thrive and succeed. As a reminder, if you're new to watching us on YouTube on our channel, hit the subscribe button below, give this video a like and comment as well. We do our best to respond to all comments as timely as possible. This week's Misfit Entrepreneur is Mark Wills. Mark is a very interesting entrepreneur and, like my daughter Hannah, an adoptee, but his journey was not as easy, something that I actually look forward to him sharing and us talking about today. Mark is the founder of a unique business called the Loan Signing System that has become a top 1% online course in America, teaching people how to not only become a notary, but how to succeed in making a side hustle or a full-time career. He's a best-selling author. He's also been featured everywhere from CNBC to Entrepreneur and Forbes, even the Today Show. And I admit, the first time that I heard about a guy who created a business in the notary space, I wasn't that excited. But then I met Mark and I realized how genius it was for him to create a massive business in this niche. And Mark's not only created a 7-figure business, but is helping countless others build 6- and 7-figure businesses in this much overlooked niche of notarization. And I'm excited for him to share with you how he's done it. So let's do it. Let's jump in. Mark, are you ready to unleash your inner misfit?
I'm ready, man. So glad to be here. And just happened to thank you for having me on, brother.
Hey, you got it, man. I'm excited to have you on. I think you have a really unique story and you have figured out how to really take a niche and blow it up into a massive business and help others do the same. But let's start there. Let's take just 3 to 5 minutes or so and tell your story, because how you got to where you're at is a really interesting one. And it's near and dear to me because it's an adoption story. So take a few minutes and just tell us, how'd you get to where you're at?
Well, I think you wanted me to kind of start from day zero. And so I was actually born in Korea. I'm an international adoptee, like your daughter. And so we definitely have a similarity there, which is amazing. But yeah, so I am basically a child of the Korean War. So I don't know how far you want me to go back, but just stop me if I'm going too far back. But post-Korean War, America occupied many American soldiers in Korea, were kind of post-Korean War. And so during this phase where we had a high occupation in Korea, American soldiers actually ended up having, they estimate 200,000 half Korean babies, half American babies. And so there were so many half Koreans, the local Koreans, the indigenous Koreans actually looked down upon any Korean that was of mixed race with an American. And so we're actually labeled the lost souls because the Korean culture just literally brushed us aside. They have estimates of, in the 60s and 70s of hundreds of thousands of these Koreans being homeless on the streets. And so my mother was, my biological mom had a baby with an American soldier. She saw what life would be like for me in Korea as a half Korean, half American. So she made the decision to put me up for adoption, have a better life, ideally in America. And so I was put into an orphanage around 2.5 years old. And then I got adopted by a family in Southern California, about 2.5. And so I came over to America at 2.5 years old. And so I was an immigrant at that point, international adoptee. And I was with my first adoptive family from 2.5 to about 7. And so where it gets a little bit sad and takes a little bit of a right turn is that family, after 5 years of having me, decided that I was too much. They bit off a little bit more than they could chew. And so I really do liken it like somebody returns something to Amazon or somebody returns something to Costco after a trial period. They're like, you know what, we tried our best, but it isn't a good fit. So they literally returned me. But this time we went into the foster care system in America. And so I'm a really big advocate for the foster care community. While it could use some tweaks, it overall does a very good for children like myself. And so I was in the foster care community for about a year after that adoption didn't work out with the first family. And then I got adopted at about age 7.5. To what I am now, Mark Wills, to the Wills family. But here's where my story takes another crazy turn is my adoptive parents, who I call my mom and dad, I don't call my stepmom, my mom and dad, they adopted 20 other children. So I walked into a family at the time of 16 to 18 children. Now they have adopted 20, they have 5 of their own. So I went from feeling, very unwanted, not sure what's going on, into almost like a group home setting. And so then through all those trials and tribulations, I created resilience. And through the resilience, it's what really led me to be an entrepreneur. And more importantly, what that taught me over my first 18 years, I want to be a heart-led entrepreneur. I want to do something that will impact other people because I know what it's like to have nobody in my corner. I know what it's like to feel not wanted. And my goal in my business is to make sure that nobody ever feels not wanted, not heard, not validated. And so now I am blessed and fortunate enough to lead a massive community within the notary industry here in America, as I am the largest coach and trainer and a community leader in the notary public niche, which is a very overlooked niche and opportunities to make money in this country. So that was about a 3-minute breakdown of
No, and that I wanted you to tell your story because that's something that can't happen with adoption and stuff. And it's a lot of kids don't respond like you did, right? They, look at that first experience of, I'm not wanted, that type of stuff. And the foster care system, as you said, is good, but it has its challenges too. What else did you take away from your experience of being adopted not once, but twice, and then spending time in the foster care system that you really attribute that helped you in your success?
Yeah. 100%. Let me address that 2 ways. I'm a true believer that every event in our life, you can look at it as an asset or a liability. Mm-hmm. And we have a choice on how we view that past event. That past event can help us, it can make us stronger, or it could break us. And to me, while I've had many, many years of therapy to get to a point where I am today, where I can tell you that story without breaking down into tears, but it's still a moment that I choose to look at as an asset. And the way I look as an asset is created resilience. I always will say this, Dave, if I had the childhood that I dreamed of, I wouldn't be the person that I am. So if I didn't have those moments to create resilience, I wouldn't be the high-level entrepreneur that I have. But more important than the high-level entrepreneur, I wouldn't have the heart that I have. If I didn't have the heart that I have, I wouldn't wake up every day trying to help another human. And so while I do wish that I had a childhood that was stereotypical, I do wish that I had my birth mom in my life and I miss her every single day, I don't know if I would trade that, because I am who I am because of it. And so I'm not who I am in spite of my past. I am who I am because of my past. Right. And it's because of those moments that created this person I am today. And I have, while I have challenges and I have moments where I want to cry and I have moments where I feel scared, I wouldn't trade that for the heart-led entrepreneur that I am today. And so it's all because of the past. It's who I am. And so I take every moment of it that I can as a strength, and I turn that into service. And so, I think it created resilience, to answer your question, Dave. And that resilience helped me be an entrepreneur. And because of my past, it helped me have empathy and sympathy for others who might struggle.
I couldn't agree more with what you said about it, even seeing it kind of with my own daughter. It reminds me, I was asked several years ago now, I was asked if I had any regrets. And my knee-jerk response, my initial response is, yeah, everybody's got regrets. I have regrets. And after that, though, I really thought about that question. I really thought about, do I have actual regrets? And as I went deeper into it and kind of challenged myself, and I think you'll understand this too, I really don't. And it's not that there aren't things that if I had a chance to do them again, I would do them differently, or avoid a mistake or that sort of thing. But literally every single action, every single thing I've had to do to get me to where I'm speaking to you right now had to happen exactly as it did. Otherwise, it wouldn't be here, right? For me to have my daughter, for me to meet my wife, for everything that had to happen, it had to happen like that, right? And so that's why I don't necessarily have regrets. It doesn't mean I don't learn from things. It doesn't mean that I wouldn't, improve upon something or change something from the past if I could do it over again. But I don't regret it, right? I kind of hear you saying that same thing.
And I think you were an example of using an event as an asset and not a liability, because you could easily choose to look at something as not having or having less than, but you're actually choosing the opposite. So I believe that's the strength of an entrepreneur is we choose to look, because, you've had a great many businesses. There's moments in those businesses that have taught you to be a better entrepreneur. So we are literally being very intentional with that event. And that's what you just described to me. It's like, look, I'm not going to pretend like I don't wish other cards have fallen the way they did, but it is what it is, and I choose to be stronger from it. And so I think you're a classic example of using everything as an asset, not a liability. And I do believe that's a choice. And I do sometimes get people go, well, Mark, you say that, but that seems to have a lack of empathy for trauma. No, I know what trauma is, but there is still a moment of understanding. I had a friend tell me just the other day, man, he goes, you know what the difference between letting go and forgiveness is? And I go, what? He goes, letting go. He goes, forgiveness is being able to look back at an event and having appreciation from learning from that moment. Letting go is just trying to forget about the past. Forgiving is looking at the past and seeing what lesson we can learn from it. And that was his definition of the difference between letting go of an event and forgiving an event. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so good. It's just everybody kind of saying the same thing, just packaged in a different way. But at the end of the day, I think the commonality is just really learning that events do happen for us. And when that lands, I think business is easier. I think relationships are easier. I think looking at your past is easier. And so what a great conversation. I didn't really realize it was going to go this direction.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I got one more kind of point around this, and I want to obviously get into all the notary stuff with you. But I think this is really, I think I see it as an adoptive parent. I'm sure you see it being an adoptee. And it's something that I think is really important to like any entrepreneur out there, anybody that's developing themselves, nature versus nurture. Right. So having my daughter adopted, it is pretty amazing, like to me, how much nurture influences something or in someone. Right. It's amazing how many times I hear people say like to our kid, like you're so much like your father or so much like your mother to her. Right. And I have to look at, I'm like, gosh, there are so many ways that like she is like patterned us or like, taking conditioning and stuff from us that that's become part of her. Obviously everybody's got their own nature too, but what impact did nurture have on you and even your success as you, started to have that impact your life?
Yeah. I mean, let me answer that very transparently, Dave. The biggest impact on nurture was the lack of nurture. Right? Because of the lack of nurture, or I shouldn't say lack, I should say inconsistency of, because I don't want to take away from anybody who has influence in my life. And I'm very appreciative, even from the parents who unadopted me to the foster care families. And so I don't want to do them injustice by saying that I didn't have any nurture. But the biggest thing that influenced me from the lack of consistent nurture was that there's other people who've experienced the same. And so because of that, I've become so empathetic. And whenever I see a homeless person, I want my son to have immediate sympathy for him. And, some people are like, oh, you're going to give that person money so they could go buy alcohol. Well, I think you're doing that person injustice, especially here in San Diego, we have a lot of former veterans who are on the streets. Right. And so we don't know everybody's story. And so because of my inconsistent nurture, I feel like my goal is to be the biggest nurturer. I'm choosing to use my lack as an asset. And so because of that, I'm very sympathetic of the entrepreneur who needs help, or my specific community, the notary community, but even any entrepreneur. I will sit there and jam with anybody because I know what it feels like not to have someone in your corner. And I will do my darndest to make sure that if I can help you feel like you do for that 1 second, I've won for the day. And so to answer your question, it's the lack of nurture that really makes me empathetic and sympathetic for just the entrepreneur, because it's such a lonely journey. And, being an entrepreneur, like, what it's like. You live in a silo. You have these dreams where people think you're crazy. And so, I really want to make sure that in my life, I'm in somebody's corner, because I know what it feels like to not be in someone's corner. Now, I've gone through a lot of therapy to be a better spouse and husband and father, to make sure that my lack of nurture doesn't, I'm breaking generational curses. But, to answer you very simply, man, it's really, I'm just want to help humans. That's all my goal is every day I wake up. And it's because of the life I've lived earlier. And I don't see that as a liability, man.
That's awesome, man. All right, well, let's talk about the notary business, okay? You say it could be a side hustle, a career for anybody. Explain how it works, how that's possible. Take us on this journey, right? How'd you get into this?
Yeah, I mean, look, everybody hears the word notary, and I don't know if this is the appropriate phrase, but it's like not the sexiest side hustle in the world, right? You tell someone, oh, I'm a realtor, like, ooh, you're a realtor, even though like 90% of realtors make no money, right? It's the top 10% doing all the big commissions. But for some reason, the notary industry doesn't have that really cachet is maybe a better word. But here's simple facts, is there is 1.2 billion notarizations a year in America. Let me say that again. That is with the B. I don't think people can rationally understand how big of a number a billion is. Okay. So there's a billion notarizations that occur. That is a billion opportunities to make money in America that most people literally have no clue. You probably had no clue that that number was so massive. And so what's cool about being a notary is there's different ways you can drill down on the niche within the niche. The most lucrative way to make money as a notary is actually a notary who works in the mortgage industry. So another crazy fact that most people don't understand is every single mortgage in America, a notary has to be assigned to it. A third-party notary not related to the transaction. And so my guess, Dave, is you own a home, if not a couple homes, right? And so when you sign a mortgage transaction, how long were you sitting with that notary for? More or less.
Yeah, long enough that my hand got tired.
Right, about an hour, right? Has it ever been longer than an hour, and maybe an hour and a half in one of those mortgage signings, Dave?
On more sophisticated real estate transactions, yeah. But typically 45 minutes to an hour. Cool.
45 minutes to an hour. You probably don't realize that notary has a line item on your closing cost sheet for $150. So you tell me a better business in America that you can make $150 for an hour worth of your time, that you don't need any formal education. All you need is some training. And that's why it's the best kept secret. You just said yourself, an hour, $150. Now call me crazy. If your daughter started a business that made her $150 an hour, you'd be pretty excited for her. And most people just don't know this, is that the notary industry, if you specialize in loan documents, and by the way, 2023 was the lowest year for purchases in America in the past 20 years. And there was 4.3 million homes that sold. That doesn't include refinances, reverse mortgages, home equity line of credits. So there is millions and millions of transactions happening, even in a slow time, that a notary who knows the loan industry can absolutely crush it. And then, Dave, it just becomes a number game. If you can do 2 closings a day at $150, you're making $300 a day. That's 5 days a week. That's $1,500 a week. You're making $80,000 a year part-time if you know what you're doing. So again, I love that your platform, which you're sharing with others, because I've been screaming from the rooftops, this is the best industry no one's heard of, because it doesn't have the cachet being a realtor does. It doesn't have the cachet of being a physical trainer. It doesn't have the cachet of being a massage therapist. But they're making way more money in any of those niches, and there's actually more opportunity.
Okay, so Mark, how do you do this, right? So if somebody is sitting there going, $150 an hour, right? I can do this part-time, I can make extra money, or I can make a career out of this. How do they get into this? What do they do?
Yeah, okay. So very simply, you got to apply to be a notary in your state. In 45 states, Dave, it is nothing more than an application. Literally, like all you do is apply to be a notary like you're applying for a gym membership. There's nothing outside of a background check. In 5 of the 50 states, like good old California, Florida, you do need to take a test, but those don't need to be, you score 70% and you pass. So it's literally just applying to be a notary in state. Easy peasy. Now you also have access to the 1.2 billion notarizations that happen a year. So once you become a notary, it's really as simple as applying. The next step, if you want to make money in the loan real estate industry niche of being a notary, it's simply learning the 5 major mortgage products that real estate agents and loan officers cover. That's a purchase, a refinance, home equity line of credit, a reverse mortgage, and a seller package. And that's where when a home seller sells a home, some of those paperwork need to be notarized. So once you learn how to do the execution, which, by the way, you can use YouTube University, or you can take a course like mine. And then once you learn how to execute, then you need to go learn how to have the conversations with realtors, lenders, escrow companies. And so the best part about this, Dave, is it fair to say that everybody in America knows at least one realtor?
Yeah, I'd say yeah.
Yes. Okay. boom, that person can give you business. So to get the business is actually a lot easier than most people understand. And so once you learn how to do the loan signings, and once you learn to get the business, again, I have a course, which we're going to talk about in a moment, how I was able to scale it. But I do want to be transparent. You don't necessarily need a course. A lot of people don't expect a course seller to say that. And that's just the truth. And so, but the best way, as you know, Dave, to get experience is to buy someone else's experience. And so I do recommend getting a course. But the truth is, you can learn this on your own. It might just take you longer. But yeah, that's the answer to your question, man. You get your notary commission with your state, super easy. You learn the loan documents, and then you learn how to get the business. And bada boom, you can get a couple signings a day and have that extra income that your family needs.
So is there a type of document signing that carries a higher, like you mentioned $150 an hour, but I've seen notaries at $60 an hour, $70 an hour. Like, what's the range? What pays what? And I guess what are the easier ones to get if you're starting out? Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably a number of things.
There's a number of things, like you said. And so I want to try to keep this as granular or as high level as I can, not as granular. So once you become a notary, Dave, there is 1.2 billion notarizations. That covers so many different things in America. It could be an apostille. It could be a wedding official. It could be just like you notarizing your buddy's field trip permission slip for their children's field trip, right? So the gamut is ginormous. The most lucrative way to make money as a notary is in the real estate industry. And so that's why I try to really tell people, focus on the mortgage documents. Now, because you get an average of somewhere between $100 to $200 per closing, because the mortgage industry has 20 different closing cost items in it. And so what a lot of people don't understand, Dave, is in one real estate transaction, it employs over 23 different independent contractors, processors, underwriters, loan officers, title officers, escrow officers, couriers. And so that's why our economy goes up and down with the real estate industry, because there's so many people's jobs that are affected. So the notary is just one of those people in the closing costs fee sheet. So your goal is to figure out how to get on that fee sheet and get a realtor to use you, get an escrow officer to use you. But again, as you know, at the time of this recording, interest rates are a point lower than they were 90 days ago. So interest rates are dropping in real time. It's an amazing time to be a notary. But even when interest rates were 8%, 4 million homes sold. So it's not relative really to the market, because the market incomes adjust. It's really just relative to your ability to go out and get the loan. So you just got to learn the mortgage documents and then stay within the real estate niche. We all know the loan officer. We all know a realtor. You can just ask them, can you help me get an in an escrow office? Can you help me get an in at a title office? And it really is kind of domino effect from there. And so it's a really easy business to get into once you kind of have the generic ABCs.
So we mentioned your course, and obviously it takes them through kind of step by step how to do this and everything. But I'm curious as to how you got this thing to be like in the top 1% of course of the United States. Like, what are the hacks? What are the marketing things you've done? What have you found that, can maybe be applied to other niches for courses that maybe people have or those watching have?
Yeah. So let me say, as you can imagine, because we are a large course and successful, I get hit up all the time for advice on how to build an online course. Yeah. And so my advice on how to build an online course is my same advice on how to build a notary business is you need to serve from your heart. If you are trying to create an online course to make money, you're in it for the wrong reasons. You need to worry about making impact first. Money comes second. And why I say that is I get so many people who have this knowledge they want to monetize. And they're like, Mark, I'm a physical therapist. I want to teach other physical therapists. And what I know, I want to charge $5,000. And I go, let me get this straight. You've not helped one human being. And the first thing out of your mind is, I want to charge someone $5,000. You're in it for the wrong reasons. The first thing you should be worrying about is, can I transfer the knowledge from my mind to somebody else? First thing, you need to test that first. A lot of online course creators don't. They come out, they spend all this money, they buy a whole social media team, and they've never even tested. Can I take what's from my brain and transfer it to somebody else's? And now they're out 50 grand. They spent all the studio time, all this podcasting equipment to record it. And I'm like, and it's because their heart's not in the right place. You never got into this business to help another human. You got into this business to make money, and you can't. Here's the truth about online education, Dave, in 2024. Is information is commoditized. ChatGPT, Bard, it's not what it was 5 years ago. So your goal is, how do I differentiate my ability to transfer information than someone can just get from ChatGPT? It's your it is your heart, first and foremost. Are you really in it to help somebody? I am 7 years in, 80,000 notaries helped. I still do new student webinars. People go, well, Mark, why are you still talking to the person who bought your course after 8 years? Because it's not about the money, man. It's about helping that human who trusted me to help make change in their life. And I'm not going to change that because I'm now a top 1% course. And so my answer to you, and if you're here listening, trying to become an online course, the first thing is realize that people can see through of you just trying to make money. Are you there trying to help them? And the first way you do that, Dave, is making sure your product's actually helped another human. So, if you have an idea of that, you should A/B test. Can I help somebody else? Can I transfer what's in my brain to somebody else and give it away for free? My first webinars, Dave, were 100% free. My first course offering was $15 and then went to $47 and then went to $97. It didn't start out where it is today. But yet so many online course instructors are doing it for the money, not doing it for transformation. And so and then I tell that to my notary community. Like, you're trying to be a notary in your community. Figure out how you can be synergistic with the realtor. Don't ask how the realtor can give you their next signing. And so if you really learn how to operate from your heart, then business, in my opinion, really just kind of happens. To me, that's the positive consequence of serving from your heart. And I tell my notary community, stop worrying about the signings. Start worrying about how you can be of value. And that's what I would tell everybody who wants to start an online course. Be of value, be of support. Figure out, can you help somebody? When you can get that, then everything else changes. So I'll end with this, Dave, for anyone who's trying to do an online course. Is in the beginning, your job is to get social proof that your knowledge can actually be applied to somebody else. So what you should be doing is giving away your course for free in return for social proof. I took Dave's course on how to start a podcast. I actually was able to get 100 downloads from what I learned from Dave. You just exchange the knowledge for that testimony, collect a lot of testimonies, and then market the testimonies. And that's how you should be building out an online course. That is the blueprint I used.
Yeah. So when somebody does that, let's say they follow that and they give, obviously, before they get, then how do you market it? Like, what are the ways that you market and, sell your course online at this point? What have you learned over the years of how to impact the most people?
Well, the first thing you got to do is be a storyteller, and so what I do is I collect social proof and just tell stories. And so what I do today is different than what I did 8 years ago. But what I do today is I then do paid traffic around the stories that I've created, the stories that I've collected is a better word of saying it. And so I do a ton of paid traffic, but my paid traffic is just stories. Nobody cares how many modules I have in my course. People care how many lives I've made change because they want to see themselves in that transformation. And so what I do is I try to collect as much social proof from different walks of life. But again, what I don't want lost in this advice, Dave, is my course actually works. My course works because I spent years perfecting the transfer of knowledge from my brain to the next person. And so the best thing people can do is just figure out, because this is what I tell a lot of online course creators, and here's the truth, is Magic Johnson was a terrible basketball coach. Great NBA player, but terrible basketball coach. Michael Jordan was a great basketball player, terrible executive. So the first thing you got to figure out is, how do I give my information that is digestible? So many people just create a course without testing, does my teaching style, do I need to tweak my modules? Do I need to tweak my handouts? Do I need to tweak the way am I making them drink out of a fire hose? How do I lessen that stream of knowledge into little streams that are digestible? So that's the first thing. And by the way, I'm 8 years in and I'm still figuring this out. I'm always not satisfied with, I've helped 80,000. Well, the next 80,000 need to have a better experience than the first. So I'm always really worried about the customer experience and the transfer of knowledge from me to them. And that is the best thing you can do as an online course creator, because I meet so many people who just want to make money. And if you're not worried about the customer journey, they're never going to tell you. Now, let me give you another piece of advice. You ready, Dave? So, Paid traffic is going up exponentially. What I paid for a Google click is not what I paid for 7 years ago. What I paid for a Facebook ad today is not what I paid 7 years ago. The only way to bring down your cost of paid traffic is by getting referrals from your current customers. Let me say that one more time. Mm-hmm. The cost of paid traffic will only go up in the future. So how do you combat? Everyone's worried about ROAS. Why do I get my ROAS? I'm like, that's actually stop. Yes, you should measure ROAS, needless to say. But it's not a one-to-one comparison because you got to then offset all the referrals.
Define that for those listening and watching, just in case they don't know it.
Yeah. The ROAS is return on ad spend, ROAS. So a lot of rookie marketers are only judging the ROAS. Like if I spend $1, am I making $1.10 back? Yes, you should be judging that. Don't let me get that twisted. But you need to also be judging what is my referral basis and then offset that to your ROAS because your ROAS is actually going up if you're getting referrals from your current customer base. And the only way you get referrals from your current customer base is my best sales force is my student. And the only reason my student is my best sales force is because I put so much effort into giving the best experience. And again, online, I'm going back to very hard information for your platform is they need to worry about their client, their student journey. They can nail that. All the marketing is relatively pointless because everybody always asks me, Mark, well, where are you putting your paid traffic? I'm like, stop asking me that question. How is your student journey? Let me see what you're doing about your student journey before I answer anything about where you should be putting paid traffic. Does that make sense? And so I think people are asking the wrong questions. So it's not what are you doing with marketing? I want to ask you, well, how's the student journey? I want to ask you, how are the modules laid out so someone doesn't give up after 3 modules? I want to ask you, how's your return policy? I want to ask you, what's your return rate? Your return rate tells you everything that you need to know. I'm very proud to tell you that my return rate is less than 1% because what that tells me, and here's the truth, not all of my students make money, but if I'm getting a less than 1% return rate, they feel empowered to make money because I am so diligent with their journey that they take in my product that equals. So someone may take my course, not make $1 with Notary, but you know what? They're like, man, Mark's course was epic. I'm still going to refer it to my buddy. Mm-hmm. It may not be right for me right now, but I'm still going to refer it because when I went through it, Mark's support was unbelievable. Mark's knowledge was unbelievable. And that's the conversations online course creators should have more than how are you marketing?
I think, there's a ton to unpack from that. In fact, anybody who's watching, listening, go back to that segment. It's like a masterclass and things.
Yes.
Here's what I see, and I think this is really cool. You look at your business or your course like it's a business, not the business in itself. The course itself is like a business. Yes. It's like the customer journey and how you hug the customer and how you take the most care of them, how you wow them, how you go above and beyond, so that when they take this and go through it, it's just the value is so much that they're not going to return it because the value's there. You can't, obviously, force action. Somebody's got to take action, and that's, knowledge without action is just information, right? So you have to put that knowledge into action, and some people do, some people don't. But the fact that you have looked at it and like, okay, how do I build this course so that I can, from A to Z, take the best care of this person? Make it the easiest for them to go through, make it the easiest for them to implement possible, and then hug them and be there for them. That's what it takes to build a great business too. It's the same type of thing, right? And so that tells me why you've done so well with it. And it kind of brings up I got a few questions just about your entrepreneurial journey and entrepreneurship in general before we get to your Misfit 3. And the first one is just kind of popped in my mind is like, what is it that you think most entrepreneurs miss when it comes to building a successful business, besides what we just discussed?
Yeah, okay, shoot, that's a good question. Because I think the biggest miss is people chase the dollars. I've already said that. I really do believe that's the biggest miss. I'm in a bunch of business peer groups, entrepreneur organizations, shout out to them. And I still think it's all about money versus the customer journey. But outside of the customer journey, what I think the biggest miss is really asking yourself, how do I exceed the expectation? Because my mentor, Craig Clemens, if you don't know Craig Clemens, he's considered the best copywriter in the world. Bold statement, but he's amazing. So, he says the biggest flaw of entrepreneurs is they try to figure out, how can I get $1 from 100 people? They're like, how do I get $100? Because all I sit about is, how do I get 1,000 people to give me $1, but they feel like they got $100 in return. And so everyone's always thinking, how do I make money off of everybody else? But he thinks, how do I exceed expectations? And so I think Alex Hormozy calls it customer surplus. And so he kind of has coined it better than Craig has. But I agree. I don't think people worry about customer surplus. I believe consumers have a base level expectation of what they want from your product after they give you money. You need to ask yourself, how do I get above that? And here's the answer, Dave, is I don't think enough entrepreneurs do surveys of their customers, because the answer lies in surveys. And so to answer your question, to come back full circle, what I don't think enough entrepreneurs do, I don't think they survey their clients enough. So that's the answer. I don't think they send out surveys saying, how can I be better? What sucks? What's great? How can the customer journey improve? Because that's all I do. I just want to know how I can serve better, and I do it via surveys. And so to answer your question specifically, is I don't think enough entrepreneurs survey their clients enough to figure out what their pain points are, or what they do great, so they can put gasoline on what's great. And so I think surveys are the most underutilized thing in most people's businesses that I see, are entrepreneurs. And I'll end with this. Most people won't take surveys out of the kindness of their hearts. So you got to incentivize it. So how do you incentivize a survey? So because I get entrepreneurs who are like, Mark, I've sent out 4 surveys, no one's answering it. Well, I'm like, I am busy too. So incentivize me, right? Give me 2 months free of a membership. Give me send me a swag hat. Because if you were spending $20 on that survey, it's probably worth $100 to you. Let me say that one more time. If you spend $20 on a survey, get information that will make it better for the next person, it's worth exponentially more than you paid for it. And so a lot of people aren't spending money or time or resources on surveying their current customers to get the feedback on what they're doing well or what they need to put gas on.
Yeah, those are great points. And, I've always said that one mistake entrepreneurs make is as their business grows, they get further away from the ground floor. They get further away from the customer in a lot of ways. And they put levels of management and stuff. And you need some of that stuff. But I've always found that the flatter you can make an organization, the closer you can have your nose to the ground, the easier it is to really understand what the customer wants, be able to adapt for those needs. Because you have to change, right? You have to adapt and make sure you're delivering the value as best you can at all times. And so, that's kind of what I hear you saying too, is just staying close to the ground floor. My last question for you before we get to your...
Let me just add to that real quick. Let me just add to that.
Yeah.
I think it's a great point. I mentioned 20 minutes ago that I still do the new student introduction webinars. And part of the reason is I want them to know that I'm real and I'm here. But the other part is exactly what you said. I want my ear to the ground for what are their pain points? Why are they here? Why they chose the company? Because that allows me to feed it into my marketing machine. And so I'm always trying to just, and again, because I care. Right. And so I think if your heart was really the first thing you led with, everything would change. So I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that's why I still do new student webinars. It's because you said it better than I did. And that's keeping my ear to the ground and being in the trenches. And if I had another manager do it, well, then I'm losing what's really built my company. And that's being really into what they need and insight. So apologize for stopping that next question.
No, that's that's a great follow-up on that point. It really, at least it's my last question for you is, what's something that you wish you knew sooner as an entrepreneur?
Well, that goes twofold. And so, what you haven't asked is how I got into the online course notary business. So I actually own 2 businesses. I own a notary placement business. And so what made me an expert, this is going to come full circle, Dave, I promise. I was a notary right out of college. A friend of mine told me about notaries making money in the real estate industry. I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I get in? I'm 25. And so I ended up scaling that business. But to what I thought was large was, I'm 28 years old making 150 grand a year. My buddies are still trying to get jobs out of college. And so, but then my current business partner was like, hey, we got to do this online. And so he was the one who kind of had the aha moment of hey, why aren't we teaching other notaries how to be as successful as you were? And I was the first one to do it. And so One of my biggest regrets was in that transition. So that's where I come full circle. So I was a notary doing great. My buddy had the idea, dude, teach other notaries. And I'm like, okay. But here's the biggest regret, or here's what I wish I would have done different, what I would have done sooner. And it just kind of goes in my Misfit 3, but I'll say it right now because here's the answer is
right.
I had a lot of imposter syndrome in the beginning. Like I'm a random notary in San Diego. And my buddy's trying to tell me to teach other notaries that I've never met in Texas and Florida and Alabama. I have students in all 50 states. And so I literally had moments of like, why would somebody listen to me on how to build a business when I've never taught another person at all? And so I actually believe I could have grown quicker had I gone all more into my content, more into being forward facing. And that really had to do with my own insecurity of people not believing that people would listen to me. And so let me give some advice on the way out before we go into your Misfit 3. Is a lot of things what holds people back, Dave, about doing online course or about trying to help other humans with what they know in their brain is they believe that they need to be exponentially smarter than who they're teaching. And so here's one of my favorite analogies I didn't make up is you do not need to be a 12th grader to a third grader because a fourth grader to a third grader is a rock star. Let me say that one more time. We have a lot of imposter syndrome because we believe we need to be this guru of gurus of guru, but the third grader doesn't need that. They just need a fourth grader to their third grader. So if you're watching or listening to this right now saying, man, should I start my online course on how to be a nutritionist or how to do, make RC cars, whatever it is, but you're not the best RC car person in the world. You don't need to be the best RC car person in the world. You just need to be a little bit better than the person you're helping. And that didn't click for me soon enough. It's like, I didn't need to be the best notary in America. I just needed to have more information to help the person right below me. I just needed to reach back to the person below me and pull them up forward with me. I didn't need to be this Tony Robbins, a Grant Cardone of my industry. I just needed to be someone who wanted to help the person that was right below me. And so I wish I would have stepped into my own earlier because I think I could have helped more people quicker than where I am today. So I don't know if that helps anybody listening, but I think a lot of times people are hesitant about starting an online course because they feel they got to be, 25 years into the business or whatever industry they're in. No, you just got to be a little bit better than the other person because a fourth grader is a rock star to a third grader.
Okay, it's time for Mark's Misfit 3. These are the 3 things that he wants you to take that you can put in your life, your business, make a difference for yourself starting today. And the way that I always frame this to every guest that comes on the show is I say, hey, look, if you were going to leave this earth tomorrow and you could only leave behind your best 3 pieces of wisdom for the generations that come after you to help them live their best life, what would those 3 things be? So, Mark, what are your Misfit 3?
So my first thing, and I'm going to kind of hit on a couple points where I talked about, but the third one will be a new one. So I really believe that, our job is to lead. I think we have a responsibility as business owners to have heartfelt businesses, to have businesses that really impact and change and not take advantage of anybody else and not scam people. And so I think the first thing is to have a heartfelt business. Which I think bleeds into my being a heartfelt husband, being a heartfelt dad. And so I think the number one thing is really understanding that money you make as a business owner is determined on the value that you give. And I think what I get from my wife is the same thing. The value I give her is the wife I get in return. And so I think the number one thing is really realizing that business, the money you make in business really is determined on the value you give your consumer. It shouldn't be about how much money can I extract from my consumer, but how much value can I give? And if you worry about the value you can give, the money always comes. And I think that is almost, I don't want to sound like, preachy, but I think if more business owners really operated with how much can I give versus how much can I get from them, I think, because I think some of the business owners get a bad rap. Oh, you're greedy. You want to get rich. No, I want to help people. And if I get rich on the way, then I deserve so. And so it's because I'm leading with value. So I think the first thing that I would tell people to just lead with your heart and really try to figure out how can I help another human being, whether that is the homeless person, whether that I'm a big advocate of the foster care industry. And so I just feel number one is be a heartfelt human, lead with your heart. If you do that, everything else comes. The number two thing that I would say don't lead with is self-belief. And what I tell my students is, Dave, is, you have an entrepreneur, business-minded community here with what you do, Misfit Entrepreneur. And so what I want to remind your community of is that 90% of America works for 10%, roughly, right? So there's only 10% of America who are brave enough to bet on themselves. And Misfit Entrepreneur Nation is the 10%. And so I tell my students, and I want to tell all the entrepreneurs hearing our conversation days, like we're all so amazing. And when you really lean into our amazingness, we lean into our courage, we lean into our confidence of who we know we are, then we're not afraid to market. We're not afraid to tell people we're open for business. It's because we are part of the 10%. We're part of the 10% that makes this America great. We're the one providing jobs, providing employment, providing GDP for the economy. Like, we sometimes forget as entrepreneurs, like, what cloth we're cut from. We're always have our head down, discouraged we're not making our numbers, discouraged we lost our bigger client, discouraged that it's not going great, instead of being encouraged on, like, we are part of the 10%. And so I think if more people remember that, then I think their self-belief would go up. And if their self-belief goes up, then I think then their business goes up. And remember, we are part of the 10%. And my last thing that I want to say, and this is speaking to my past, and I want to speak to everybody and saying that, remembering you are worthy. You are good enough. I don't care who's told you in the past that you weren't good enough. I don't care who in the past. If an inner voice in you says, I'm not worthy of success, I'm not worthy of where I'm at, that's bullshit. I'm sorry if that's not appropriate, but
that's a great Misfit 3. I especially, like, all of them are so good. They're timeless too. That second one on the 10%, I couldn't agree more. If people want to learn more about you, Mark, where should they go?
Yeah, loansigningsystem.com. If you want to learn more about education on the notary business, I have a loan signing system Instagram handle. I'm all over the internet. I'm hard to find. If you are in the notary business, YouTube channel has 10 million views on it, LinkedIn, Facebook. But thank you for having me on today, Dave. I'd love to help anybody if they want to just reach out as a fellow entrepreneur, even adoptees, foster people, reach out to me. I want to try to be a resource to you. But Dave, thank you for what you do. I told you this off camera, but I want to say it again. It's like, when I meet another human willing to give a child another opportunity, like, you're a superhero, brother. And so I just want to make sure I say that to you.
We're the lucky ones, and it is really, really true. And we'll link to you and everything that you shared in the show notes, the best ones in the business, for reasons that I'll share more in a second. But first, for those of you that are new, this is your first episode with us. Thank you. It's an honor to have you with us, and I hope you become a regular listener and subscriber. And for all of you that are with us, you Misfit entrepreneurs that are there each and every week in and out, a week out with us, I cannot thank you enough for your support of the show. You are what makes this go in over 100 countries every single week. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And make sure and go out and check out the show notes for this episode. They are the best in the business. Why? Because I do them myself. As part of my personal growth routines, I go back to these episodes every single week and I take my best pieces of wisdom, tips, habits, things like that great guests like Mark are sharing, and I bring those out and share those with you. So go out and check those out. And then go give this episode a rating and review. Like and comment on it. Help share Mark's message, because we all know, and I say this in every episode, one great episode can change someone's life. Maybe something that Mark shared today was that missing link you were looking for to get to your next level. So share this with others. And again, Mark, thank you so much for coming on, sharing all your wisdom, your insight, and your story today.
You're welcome, man. Thanks for having me, and let's go.